About 8 years ago, I was scrolling through Reddit and came across this post right here, which asked the question on Ask Reddit, what is the happiest 5-word sentence you could hear? I scrolled down and the top comment of the post was, "You just won the lottery," but it was the reply to this comment that stuck with me for all these years. I had to dig it up because now that I have a YouTube channel where I discuss topics of interest, not only to myself, but maybe others as well, I thought that this could be a lot of fun to go through for anyone who had never come across it. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese, and in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at what you should be doing in the unfortunate event that you end up winning the lottery. The first part of this post tells us a story about the outcomes large lottery winners go through and hones in specifically on a man named Jack Whitaker, the poster boy for the dangers of winning large sums of money. Congratulations, you just won millions of dollars on the lottery. That is great. Now you're No, really? You are You see, it's something of an open secret that winners of obnoxiously large jackpots tend to end up badly, with alarming regularity, saying that it happens quite often. Not the $1 million winners, but anyone in the 9-figure range is at high risk. 8 figures, pretty likely to be screwed. 7 figures, yep. Painful. Perhaps this is a consequence of the sample. The demographic of lottery players might be exactly the wrong people to win large sums of money, or perhaps money is the root of all evil. Either way, you are going to have to be very careful. Don't believe me? Consider this. What an eye-catching opening start to this story. It's basically saying people who play the lottery are gamblers and are a demographic that should definitely not be handed large sums of money for reasons. Let's go through some of the actual statistics here and talk a bit more about it. So, large jackpot winners face double-digit multipliers of probability versus the general population to be the victim of homicide, something like 20 times more likely, drug overdose, bankruptcy, how's that for irony given all the money in the world, and end up being bankrupt versus other people who just get by day to day for many years down the line, and kidnapping, and triple digit multiples of probability versus the general population rate to be convicted of drunk driving, the victim of homicide at the hands of a family member, which apparently is 120 times more likely in this case. Wow, that's pretty crazy. A defendant in a civil lawsuit and a defendant in a felony criminal proceeding. Believe it or not, your biggest enemy if you suddenly become rich is you. At least you will have the consolation of meeting your fate by your own hand. But if you can't imagine it on your own, don't worry, there are a number of willing participants ready to help you start your vicious downward spiral for you. Mind you, many of these will be friends, friendly neighbors, or a family member. Often they won't even have evil intentions at heart, but as I'm sure you know, that makes little difference in the end. Most aren't evil, most aren't malicious, some are. None are good for you. I remember reading this 8 years ago. I still remember how catchy it was just getting to this point of the story. Let's jump in. Jack Whitaker, a Johnny Cash attired West Virginia native, is the poster boy for the dangers of a lump sum award. In 2002, at 55 years old, he won what was also at the time the largest single awarded jackpot in US history, $315 million US. He planned to live as if nothing had changed, or so he said. He was remarkably modest and decent before the jackpot, and his ship sure came in, right? Wrong. So we have a pretty stand-up guy who's living a pretty good life, just win an absolutely bonkers amount of money. Mr. Whitaker became the subject of a number of personal challenges, escalating into personal tragedies, complicated by a number of legal troubles. Whitaker wasn't the typical lottery winner either. His net worth at the time of his winnings was in excess of $15 million, owing to his ownership of a successful contracting firm in West Virginia. His claim to want to live as if nothing had changed actually seemed plausible. He should have been well equipped for wealth. He was already quite wealthy after all. By all accounts, he was somewhat modest, low profile, generous, and good-natured. He should have coasted off into the sunset, and apparently that's not what happened. For context, in America, if you win the lottery, you can take the winnings in 2 different ways. You can take it paid out annually as a percentage of the total winnings, or you can take a lump sum. They differ in how much tax you'll have to pay and how much you'll end up with, Jack decided to take the lump sum, paying a hefty amount of tax on the winnings from the get-go. As stated here, he took the all-cash option at $170 million instead of the annuity option and took possession of $114 million after paying $56 million in taxes. Jack quickly became the subject of a number of financial stalkers who would lurk at his regular breakfast hideout and accost him with suggestions for how to spend his money. They were unemployed. No, an interview tomorrow morning wasn't good enough. They needed cash right now. Perhaps they had a surefire business plan. Their daughter had cancer. A niece needed dialysis. Needless to say, Jack stopped going to his breakfast place. Eventually, they began ringing his doorbell, sometimes in the early morning. Before long, he was paying an off-duty deputy to protect his family. He was accused of being heartless, cold, and stingy because he probably wasn't handing out a lot of that cash early on. And it just got worse from there. Letters poured in, children with cancer, diabetes, MS, you name it. He hired 3 people to sort through the mail and a detective to figure out which claims were true and which ones weren't. The clerk who had sold Jack the ticket was a victim of collateral damage as well. Jack had written her a check for $44,000 and bought her house, but she was by no means a millionaire. And then when rumors started, because there's this age-old rumor apparently that the person who sells the ticket gets 10% of the winnings, people started hounding her. She was basically followed home from work, threatened, and assaulted, which would be pretty upsetting if I was someone who had just sold a ticket doing my day job and someone was lucky enough to win. Jack's car was broken into twice by trusted acquaintances who watched him leave large amounts of cash in it. $500,000 and $200,000 were stolen in separate instances. I'm just going to pause right there for a second. Leaving $500,000 and $200,000 of cash sitting in your car is just crazy. No one is doing that in today's day and age. Why could you be so stupid? That to me is bonkers. He probably deserved to lose that money in that instance. No remorse there for Jack. Anyway, the thieves spiked his drink with prescription drugs in the first instance, and the second incident was the handiwork of his granddaughter's friends who had been probing the girl for details on where Jack's cash was for weeks. Even Jack's generosity was questioned. He offered $10,000 to improve the city's water park so that it was more handicap accessible. Locals complained that he spent more money at the strip club. Amusingly, this was true. It's not the point. He was giving money out to people for a good cause. It was his money and he could do what he wanted with it, and people are greedy. It's never going to be enough. Jack ended up investing quite a bit into his own business, tripled the number of people in his business employ, making him one of the largest employers in the area, and eventually had given away almost $14 million to charity through a foundation that he had set up for that purpose. This is, of course, what you are supposed to do. Set up a foundation, be careful about charity giving. It made no difference in the end. And this is where it really gets juicy. Jack had been accused of ruining a number of marriages. His money made other men look inferior, they said. Whenever he went into the small West Virginian town he called home, resentment grew quick and festered. Jack paid 4 settlements related to this sort of claim. You read that right? 4, meaning people sued him on the basis that he, being wealthy, ruined their marriage, which is bonkers, but it happened 4 times there. Jack's family and their immediate circle were quickly the victims of odds-defying numbers of overdoses, emergency room visits, and even fatalities. His granddaughter, the 18-year-old Brandy, who Jack had been given $2,100 a week in an allowance, was found dead after having been missing for several weeks. Her death was apparently from a drug overdose, but Jack suspected foul play. Her body had been wrapped in a tarp and hidden behind a rusted out van. Her 17-year-old boyfriend had expired 3 months earlier in Jack's vacation house, also from an overdose. Some of his friends had robbed the house after his overdose, stepping over his body to make their escape and then returning for more before stepping over his body again to leave. His parents sued for wrongful death, claiming that Jack's loose purse strings contributed to their son's death. Amazingly, juries are prone to award damages in cases such as these. Jack settled again, meaning he handed over more of his money from other people's choices from his generosity. Truly quite sad. And it levels up again. Even before the deaths, the local and state police had taken special interest in Jack after his newfound fame. He was arrested for minor and less minor offenses many times after his winnings, despite having had a nearly spotless record before the award. Jack's high profile couldn't have helped him much in this regard. In 18 months, Jack had been cited over 250 violations, ranging from broken tail lights on every one of his new 5 cars to improper display of renewal stickers. A lawsuit charging various police organizations with harassment went nowhere, and Jack was hit with court costs instead, meaning cops were literally looking for either bribes or to raise revenue through Jack's dismay. They were smashing his headlights. Again, super sad for him. Almost at the end now. Jack's wife filed for divorce and in the process froze a number of his assets and the accounts of his operating companies. Caesars in Atlantic City sued him for $1.5 million to cover bounced checks caused by the asset freeze. Today, Jack is badly in debt and bankruptcy looms large in his future. But hey, that's just one example, right? Wrong. And then here we have a pretty decent list of others who have fallen into the same traps. I'm just going to read the top bit. You can scroll through the list. I've linked it down in the description below if you'd like to have a look. Nearly 1/3 of multi-million-dollar jackpot winners eventually declare bankruptcy. Some end up worse. To give you just a taste of the possibilities, consider the fate of these people here. So that's part 1, which is pretty grim. Part 2 is talking about what you should actually do in the event where you win the lottery. I'm going to jump into another post which has it outlined or outlaid much neater. It's much more consolidated than the original thread, and that's why it's going to look a little bit different, but the context is the same. So what the hell do you do if you are unlucky enough to win the lottery? This is absolutely the most important thing you can do right away. Nothing. Yes, nothing. Do not declare yourself the winner yet. Do not tell anyone. The urge is going to be nearly irresistible to resist. Trust me. I'm pretty sure that I would cave in and tell someone, but I'd like to think that I'd have the willpower and discipline not to. But this is the advice. Step 1, immediately retain an attorney. Get a partner from a large national firm. Don't let them pawn off junior partners or associates on you like Meghan Markle or Mike Ross from Suits. You want Harvey Specter or Louis Litt. They might try, all law firms might, but insist instead that your lead be a partner who has been with the firm for a while. Do not use your local attorney. Yes, I mean your long-standing family attorney who did your mother's will. Do not use the guy who fought your dry cleaner bill. Do not use the guy you have trusted your entire life because of his long and faithful service to your family. In fact, do not use any firm that has any connection to family or friends or community. Trust me, this is bad. You want someone who has never heard of you, any of your friends, or any members of your family. Go to the closest big city, walk into the biggest national firm asking for one of the trust and estate partners you have previously looked up on. Here's a website for the American ones, but the premise is the same for whatever country you're in. Step 2, decide to take the lump sum. As I talked about earlier, it's a little bit different in America compared to where I live here in Australia. We recently just had an 80 million jackpot just go off, and it's quite a substantial amount of money. Here in Australia, all of it is handed off to you. The summary for this step here is that you're going to most likely be better off taking the lump sum because yes, you might pay a little bit more in tax in America, but the point is you're going to be left with a big chunk of money that you can do plenty of with and live a happy life. So I'm going to skip over step 2, but take the lump sum if it's an option. Step 3, decide right now how much you plan to give to family and friends. This really should not be more than 20% of the total figure. Figure it out right now. Pick your number, tell your lawyer, that's it. Don't change it. 20% of 114 million in Jack's case is 22.8 million. That leaves you with $91.2 million. Do not consult with family when deciding how much to give to your family. You are going to get advice that is badly tainted. I love that word. And a conflict of interest. And if other family members find out that Aunt Flo was consulted and they weren't, you will never hear the end of it, neither will Aunt Flo. This might later form the basis for an allegation that Aunt Flo unduly influenced you, and a lawsuit might magically appear on this basis. No, I'm not kidding. I know of one circumstance related to a business windfall, not a lottery where the plaintiffs won this case. This is really, really good advice in my honest opinion. I know people who have influence on someone's wedding. Someone provided influence and the other person wasn't consulted, and everyone starts festering and hating everyone. That is so much less important or large in scale compared to winning $100 million. Really on the point, really well worded. The two best were advice will be tainted and a conflict of interest. Do not give anyone cash. Ever, period, just don't. Do not buy them a house. Do not buy them cars. Tell your lawyer that you want to provide your family and that you want to set up a series of trusts for them that will total 20% of your after-tax winnings. Tell him you want the trust empowered to fund higher education, some help, not total, purchase of their first home, some provisions for weddings and the like, whatever. Do not put yourself in the position of handing out cash. Once you do, if you stop, you will be accused of being a heartless bastard or bitch. Trust me, it won't go well. I again somewhat agree with it. It would be very hard to say I've got all this money and you can only have it in small packets, but I do see where they're going with this. It will be easy to lose perspective. It is now the duty of your friends, family, relatives, and so on, all the way into their inner circles to skew your perspective, and they take this job quite seriously. Setting up a trust, a managed fund for your family that is in the double-digit millions is amazingly generous. You need never have trouble sleeping because you didn't lend Uncle Jerry $20,000 in small denomination unmarked bills to start his chain of deep fried peanut butter pancake restaurant. Your attorney will have a number of good ideas how to pass this wealth out without turning your siblings and everyone else involved into the latest Paris Hilton. I can see how this could be an encouraged way to support people throughout their lives in mass without losing large sums of money over the course of years, because like he says, you'll lose your perspective and money will probably most likely not be something you worry about ever again if you do this right. Step 4, you will be encouraged to hire an investment manager. Considerable pressure will be applied. Don't. Basically goes through saying that they charge you fees and that you can put your money into investments that are going to perform better than paying someone to do the exact same thing for you. But the second paragraph is worth covering. You should smile, thank them for their time, and then tell them you will get back to them next week. Don't sign anything. Don't write on a cocktail napkin. Don't sign it. Lottery lawsuits have been won and lost over drunkenly scrawled cocktail napkins. Wow, that's really interesting. But the best bit about this paragraph, never call them back. Trust me, you will thank me later. This tactic, smiling, thanking people for their time, and promising to get back to people is going to have to become familiar. You will have to learn to say no gently without saying the word no. It sounds underhandedly sneaky, and it is part of your new survival kit. I mean the word survival quite literally. Get all this figured out before claiming your winnings. They aren't going anywhere, just relax. This again is something I would struggle with, to fight the resistance to walk in and say, this is my winning ticket. I'm quitting my job, give me the money. It's just, I know it's right. And it's really interesting how it's been written out. And that's why I love it so much, is that what they're saying here is absolutely correct. Step 5 basically says if you're paranoid that you're going to become some big shot investor and potentially worried that you might lose your newly acquired fortune, to buy some very safe and secure assets and investments. Basically, the example they give here is completely out of date. That was a long time ago. But the point is you could do some research into putting your money into something that is a relatively safe return, something like government bonds that guarantees money to be coming in for the long term in the event that you lose the rest of it. So far, leading back over all the previous steps, we come to this point here, where after all these decisions have been made, that leaves about 80% of 91.2 million, basically $72.9 million remaining. Here's where things start to get less clear. Personally, I think you should dump half of this, 36.4 million, into a boring S&P 500 index fund. Find something with low fees. You are going to be constantly tempted to retain sophisticated advisors who charge nominal fees. Don't, period. Even if you lose every other dime, you have $638,400 per year based on the safe investments we made in the previous step that you didn't have before. That will keep coming until the United States falls into chaos. We're kind of already there at the time of recording this video, but it is important nonetheless. Fuck advisors and their fees. Instead, drop your $36.5 million into the market in a low-fee vehicle, unless we have unprecedented downturn like a global pandemic, the likes of which the United States has never seen, should return around 7% or so over the next 10 years. You should expect to touch not even a dime of this money for 10 to 15 or even 20 years. In 20 years, that 36.4 million could easily become $115 million. This one is a massive step, super important, totally agree with it. In some capacities, you'd have to figure out the fine tunings, but that's the concept here is you're investing in a low costing index fund and you're going to leave it there and hope that the market tracks like it has for the last 100 years at 7 to 12% every single year, and you'll make all of that fortune back without even having to touch it. Step 7, and the final step. So you've put your safety net in place. You have provided for your family beyond your wildest dreams, and you still have $36.4 million in cash. You know you will be getting around $700,000 per year unless the Capitol building is burning down. You don't ever need to give anyone you care about cash, since they are provided for generously and responsibly and can't blow it in Vegas. And you have a huge nest egg that is growing at market rates. Given the recent dip, at the time of recording this, it must have dipped a bit. You'll be buying in at a great price, similar to today. What now? Whatever you want. Go ahead and burn through $36.5 million in hookers and blow. I love that they added hookers and blow in there. That's a super important comment. If you want to, you've got more security than 99% of the country, let alone the world. A lot of it is in trusts. So even if you are sued, your family will live well and progress across generations. If your lawyer is worth his salt, I bet he is. Think of Harvey Specter and Louis Litt again, great examples, great TV show. Then you will be insulated from most lawsuits. Anyhow, buy a nice house or two. Make sure they aren't stupid investments though. Go ahead and be an angel investor and fund some startups, but refuse to do it for anyone you know. Friends and money, oil and water. It's a good statement. Play, have fun. You earned it by putting together the shoe sizes of your whole family on one ticket and winning the jackpot. What an absolutely amazing post. It's in the archives, but I really wanted to cover it in today's video. And I'd really like to hear what you think of this approach. There is a lot that has just been digested, and if you've made it this far in the video, I hope you got some value out of it. Absolutely fantastic read in my own opinion. I have linked both of these subreddits in the description down below as well if you wanted to go back through them. My favorite comment from the thread was, "That was the most useful thing I have ever read on how to do something that I will never do." Just as a fun fact, because truthfully, I don't play the lottery that much, and if I ever did win, you'd probably never find out, because I'd follow a lot of the advice that's been put very carefully into this post. And I really have nothing else to talk about. I know it's a bit of a long video today, but nonetheless, I wanted to get through it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful. I hope that it was a bit of fun for you. If it was, hit that like and subscribe button down below. I really do appreciate the support. It goes a long way for the channel and it does not go unnoticed. And I will leave you there. Have a good day. Have a good week. And as always, I'm going to see you in the next one, because you're definitely going to click on that next video. Bye for now.